Hi, my name's Nicol. I'm Theme Leader for Governance, Gender and Poverty here at IWMI, based in Sri Lanka, and welcome to this special session on World Food Day, the theme of which this year is on social protection and agriculture, and I'm going to be talking about, hopefully receiving questions from you two about the role, the importance, the significance of water in relation to social protection and agriculture. Couple of thoughts to kick off, really. Social protection has many elements to it. It's a vital part of social security, ensuring important parts of the population don't slide into poverty. You could argue it has three, or slide into destitution. It has three kind of key elements: prevention, protection and promotion. Why is water important in those elements in relation to agriculture? Well, if you take a country like Ethiopia, for example, highlands of Ethiopia, highly dense population, increasingly vulnerable and insecure for different reasons, partly because of climate change, climate variability. Also the pressure on land and available resources means that access to critical food-producing inputs to agriculture are under pressure. So issues to do with prevention, particularly in relation to water, can include avoiding the shocks of lack of water, improving the smoothing, if you like, of availability of the resource within seasons and across years, and also making more use of that resource when it's available in different ways, so bringing water into use that otherwise hasn't been available, tapping groundwater or harvesting rainwater. A farmer in, for instance, Warada in Amhara region can make real use of extra water if that water is available at the right times. The market conditions are such that they can sell produce locally in a market, Lahidar, Debre Marcos. They can sell potatoes, onions, another crop, perhaps green peppers, and they can bring extra income. They can bring perhaps another 50% income in any given year, and that can help trigger ways of stepping out of poverty, of having more cash available to invest in other things. So farmers I've spoken to recently in Warada, for instance, have taken that extra income from producing during a dry season period and selling locally to purchase their own transport. So building, for example, a way of taking their produce to market in the next year rather than relying on available transport, which may be unreliable in particular cases. So, finding transport, also investing in household goods, small solar lanterns that enable, for instance, children at night to study after it's dark, can have huge knock-on effects later down the line in terms of livelihood security and sustainability. So small things, small ways of bringing water into production and making it more available, accessible and utilizable in effect, can really have an important impact on the prevention of vulnerability at a household level. And also it's about managing the resource more effectively to protect households against the damaging effects of flooding, for example, or drought, helping to reduce risk, in effect, at a local level, making households perhaps better able to plan in the longer term livelihood strategies or diversification of livelihoods. And lastly, in terms of promoting what are increasingly seen as more commercial approaches to agriculture, and finding ways of linking to market chains and value chains that help generate en masse, if you like, within a community, a more substantial shift away from subsistence production. So, these are some of the key elements that link water to social protection in agriculture. One of the kind of framing ideas, if you like, that we've been developing under the Water, Land and Ecosystem Programme, also with IWMI and other partners, has been this idea of water-smart agriculture. What is that, you think, another smart? Well, you could argue it has four elements to it. It has a market element. So, if you're a smallholder farmer in a part of, for instance, Kilimanjaro region of Tanzania, what is it that you can produce that will be part of an important market value chain? So take sorghum, for example, in a district like Same. Sorghum is a product used in brewing. Local breweries or Tanzanian breweries in Moshi, for example, are increasingly demanding some of these products. So farmers can find a double win, or they can certainly improve their resilience and some of their livelihood security through producing more sorghum, but also that's a market that's emerging that they can tap into, and they can produce for a brewing industry, for example, that's growing. So, the market smart, if you like, is thinking strategically about those kind of those links to value chains and markets. The other smart is thinking not just about water in water smart agriculture, but thinking about soil. And soils are the mechanism that really drive or deliver water to the root systems of crops. So they're critically important. And getting that soil management aspect right in water smart agriculture is so central to ensuring that crops have water at the right time when they're fruiting in their growth cycle, and also reducing risk so that if there's a shortened season perhaps because of lack of rainfall, the soil moisture retention capacity has been increased through good management practices, possibly through conservation agriculture, low or minimum tillage or other techniques, such that the crops can then survive, if not thrive, in ways that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So the soils being a kind of second smart area, if you like. And then the two key sort of central pillars are: what is the balance to strike between rainfall and managing rainfall and using rainwater effectively in agriculture, and developing irrigation. So irrigation is often seen as a solution, but it's only one of many. And how you do irrigation is as important as deciding to do irrigation, because it does increase water use. Inefficient irrigation can have poor impacts on crops, but at the same time supplementary irrigation can generate benefits for farmers, reducing risk and increasing the productivity and the yield of their farming. So irrigation, it needs unpacking in water smart agriculture, it needs balancing with rain-fed systems development, and also needs to be seen in the context of wider resource governance. So, intrinsic to this whole thing about social protection of water and agriculture is really a very important element of resource governance and thinking about the resource as well as just the access to it. Groundwater being a classic example in parts of Ethiopia around Tana Basin. Increasingly access to diesel pumps is enabling farmers to access shallow aquifer water, which is fine because they can use it to irrigate and they can increase their yields and production. But more and more farmers doing the same thing in a kind of unfettered or unmanaged way can lead to serious depletions in available resources, so aquifer levels can decline, which will then affect the farmers who have least capacity to abstract from deeper aquifer levels, which has an impact possibly on the poorer farmers. So you can have a kind of a slight negative feedback loop. It's not to say don't irrigate at all, it's to say, do it in the context of effective resource governance as far as you can, which is another critical element in this idea of water smart agriculture. And if you want more information, we have this source book produced in the last couple of years, which will really, I think, help provide a series of very useful examples of how this idea has been taken up, not just at a practical farm level, but also in terms of policymakers, because the source book itself was actually developed with policymakers, with practitioners, in a collaborative process of thinking through what does water smart agriculture mean and how do we take it into interventions with farmers. So, another idea and another area that's critically important to social protection and agriculture is the SDGs. So, the SDGs have their focus on, obviously, the SDG Goal 6 on water is one of 17, but if you look at the other 16 closely, you'll find, they're very connected also to water, whether it's climate change, whether it's food security, whether it's the role of gender and women's empowerment. These connections are so central to understanding social protection and water in agriculture in terms of rural development. Take women's time, for example. The impact of a distant water supply on women's time and their availability for other household productive and reproductive activities can be seriously impaired when water supplies are distant, when it takes a long time to access the resource, but also when that resource itself is is perhaps very poor quality, so the impact on the household and the health of the household, the morbidity, the mortality can be very seriously impaired. So those connections between the big water of agriculture, the small water of domestic supply are also very important to consider. Thank you.